Hey everybody, my name is Paul Eston Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. We're streaming live simultaneously in 3 different places. The Heavy on Jets Facebook page, of course, to all you crazy New York Jet fans out there. 20,000 of you. My YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. And of course, on the Twitter sphere, never forget, at BOY Green the color 25, always scrolling on the ticker down below. It's time to go behind enemy lines, and we do that for the second time. The rematch, number 2, New York Jets, Buffalo Bills, and there is a lot on the line for both of these teams getting in. So to get a proper perspective on all things Buffalo for this game, we're bringing on a very special guest, Kevin Masseri. He is the Cover One Bills show host, specifically of the Going Deep podcast. So let's bring him in, part of that network. That is Kevin here on the show. What's up, Kevin?
Glad to be here. Love enemy lines. Love going behind enemy lines. Love doing these crossovers. Are some of the funnest times that you have talking to another fan base as well as to another host. I love it. And I'm assuming there's a lot to talk about too.
That there is. And Kevin, we share that very nugget right there. I tell most of my guests this either at the end of the show and sometimes it's off air, but let's bring it on air, baby. My favorite part about this gig, doing this job, is the networking with, whoever the team's playing. In this particular case, it's a team that the Jets play twice a year. So I got a lot of friends in Buffalo, Miami, New England, because we do these shows obviously a lot more frequently than some of the other teams like a Cowboys that we see once every 4 years or what have you. But I will still say I love expanding the network and meeting new people. And this is, popping the cherry on the show, Kevin. So I appreciate you doing that for us.
Love being here, Boy Green. I have some big time Yankees fan. So I have some ties to my New York friends. So I love to interact. Got a lot of Jets Yankees fans that I know. So I know a lot of what they're going through. So it's always fun, specifically New York, whether it's the Jets or the Giants, to talk.
Of course. So let's dive in. And I'm going to be honest. I'm sure some people would prefer a softball right off the top, but we need to increase the heat in the room. That's how you really find an interview here, Kevin. So I have to ask this simply. In that first Bills matchup, of course, Bills-Jets matchup, that is, at the end, Josh Allen hurts his arm. We ultimately find out it's the UCL injury. And we're like, man, like the conversation all week leading up to their next game, which was the Vikings or the Bills, is, oh, man, how many weeks is Josh Allen going to miss? Like, oh, man, this is massive. Like, oh, boy, what's going to happen here? And running through the tunnel, oh, here comes old JA-17 running through. He doesn't miss one gosh darn game. But I have to ask you, Kevin, because I've seen most of the Bills games because most of them have been primetime or right in my face, so it's hard to miss myself. But you've seen both post-Jets game, all these games, and pre-Jets games, all of these games. So this question fascinates me. How much has the UCL injury affected Josh Allen, if at all, this season? Is he the same exact guy he was earlier? Is there nothing to it? Is he struggling on shorter passes, intermediate passes, deeper passes? Like, what's your overall take on Josh Allen post-UCL injury?
It's a funny one because we'll take it a step further, and I'll tell you that up until literal kickoff, he was in the training room getting his rehab. He was getting some extra treatments. Wow. Literally, you had Case Keenum with an armband on against the Vikings, and Josh was active. That was a pretty strong tell. They weren't going to go in with one quarterback. So it was a fair tell. And then we all kind of proposition, like, if he's active and on the sideline, minus like maybe some weird concussion type of thing, like why would he not be in? He's well enough to be one play away. So that's didn't make any sense either. So, there was still a large contingent that thought he was going to be a decoy and thought he would then back up Case Keenum and maybe play in an emergency situation. I never thought that made sense. I was even questioned a couple of times because straight up Case Keenum was taking like end of warm up snaps with the first team offense to kind of, I don't believe there was much games with the Minnesota Vikings. Like it wasn't like some big ploy. I don't believe it could have been a little bit, but that's not necessarily Sean McDermott's style. So even up until kickoff and then Josh comes out of the tunnel literally 5 minutes before the game. And we're like, okay, I think we're pretty sure he's going to start. Now you go to the game against the Vikings now and he looked pretty good. I didn't have many issues. The Bills got up 17 points. Were dominating much stretches of the game. Most of that game falls on the defense, not being able to close it out. They lost Tremaine Edmonds in the middle of that game, and he was covering Adam Thielen in the middle of the field. for the majority of the day. Wentz goes out, and all of a sudden there's gaping holes. The Bills are missing some big defensive players in that game. They were able to come back. Bills played it kind of conservatively. Josh Allen had to go under center and fumbled a snap. Where he was in shotgun all day. That's the biggest time you saw the UCL injury affect him, was he was rushing it. He stepped in too early. Gabe Davis is pushing him for that quarterback sneak push. And the next thing you know, no one could find the ball on the ground. They recover in ridiculous fashion for a touchdown. Just add it to the list of ways that the Bills have lost in the last, really, since the history. But added in most recent memories, 13 seconds. Now you have this random fumble. It doesn't make any sense. But Josh Allen's a beast in these situations. We've seen him pick it up and score touchdowns in similar situations. So it just didn't make any sense. Josh then leads the team down the field and ties the game to take it into overtime. Then drive down the field again in overtime after the Bills had stopped the Vikings to a field goal. Looked seemingly to win that game in overtime, and then Josh threw an interception, which to me was more of a scheme issue where the scheme did not drag Patrick Peterson away from Gabriel Davis. Really had 3 guys in a 10-yard radius, leading to an interception in one of the craziest games ever, mixed in with a Justin Jefferson ridiculous catch with a backup cornerback playing safety in that game. So it was a bizarre instance of Josh's elbow mixed with some weird defensive alignments, mixed with some conservative play calling, mixed with bad scheme throw. That I will say this on your show, Josh needs to make that throw. In terms of, I don't have any issues with him taking the chance there, because that's why he's Josh Allen. You don't scale that back. You scaled it back the next week when during the great snow game of the century. We've heard it from Dolphins fans all week about how, we don't play in the elements. It's really funny. We just run to Detroit. So that was not very well taken by Bills fans. And we're like, literally couldn't drive. Like, it was a literal state of emergency. It was illegal to leave your house. We can't use New York State money to clear out a football game and think that that's going to go over pretty well. There would still be nobody there anyways. Cleveland couldn't get into town. So many issues with that. But then we saw, to your question, we saw conservative Josh Allen now because of that interception and the elbow. We see short passing. We see Dawson Knox. We see running back catches. We see Stephon Diggs, for the first time really in years, upset on the sideline. Sean McDermott was able to calm him down, and then he's able to play actually really well in the second half. And it was just kind of a new environment. Like, this is what a game manager's like. We've kind of so far removed from that we're like, this is not the Josh Allen we want to see anymore. And you do see some effects on arm angles, as Tony Romo put it. Certain angles he would struggle with, I would hurt him and would just go into the ground. It made no sense what was going on. There was no rhyme or reason on specific deep, medium, or short passes. It was certain angles, certain positions, certain times he got a shot of pain while throwing the ball. And that has since dissipated since that Cleveland, less in Minnesota as well. So it's kind of dissipated. I would say this would have been the game you would have played. Josh Allen went 3-1 in this stretch. Could Case Keenum have gone 3-1? I don't believe so. So I think the Bills still feel like they made out on this, and almost went 4-0. So I think that they made out on a situation post Jets game to where they probably 2-2, maybe even 1-3 with Case Keenum. So they feel pretty confident in the decision they made to play through it. There was no real risk of injury per what we've heard at Cover One, based on. It's not a pitcher. So based on, he would have needed like almost the exact same play to replicate itself in an extension with a collision. It was not very likely to be a reoccurring injury. The Bills felt pretty comfortable by that. And then by last week against the Patriots, you saw kind of ridiculous Josh throwing balls while he's out of bounds. Didn't really need to do too much. They ran the ball down the Patriots' throats, which was funny. So all of that being said, and then obviously, you had a Thanksgiving Day game in there that we saw Von Miller go down against Detroit since New York's game. So that was a bigger take. Last Thanksgiving, we lost Trey White to an ACL on turf. This Thanksgiving, we lost Von Miller to an ACL on turf in a dome. So definitely some issues there, and definitely the league needs to address this turf issue as many times that people have said, like on grass that may not have snapped. So, it's kind of full circle yesterday when we heard the news of them going in to do a cleanup for Von Miller, and then them needing to do a full reconstruction where they took a part of his other patella tendon and his other knee to put in for a graft in his right knee. He said he's going to be back in 7 months. He also said he was going to be back for this Jets game. So we can only take that with a grain of salt. But I do think he's going to be more on the aggressive end as compared to Trey White taking a full year. I think you see him more toward training camp. So that's kind of a recap since the last Jets game. But ultimately, when it comes to Josh Allen, he is full strength for this game. He's full practice now. No real limitations. He's running the ball as good as ever. The team's running the ball as well as they have this year. And he is making pretty much all the throws that he has always made. So I would say there was definitely some issues in that Cleveland game, definitely some issues in the Vikings game. As you got to a little bit more toward Detroit, there was still some issues, but then by the time the Patriots game rolled around last week, he was fine, and now he's had 10 days, and he's been in pretty good shape. So the Bills feel like they escaped that 3-1.
Right. Well, I want to give a quick follow-up here. Now, this may not be fair, and feel free to call it out if it's not, but one of the things I noticed, and this is predating the UCL injury a tad, but over the last 6 games, Josh Allen has only thrown for over 300 yards once. That's the game they lost against the Minnesota Vikings. I ask you, is that scheme-wise? Is that like, hey, we don't need Josh Allen to go? Obviously, you just talked about the winning record during that stretch, and obviously that includes a little beyond that as well, pre-injury. Is that like, hey, we don't need Josh Allen to do that? Is that UCL effect, especially obviously in the games that it has obviously been post-UCL? Or like, what is it? What's the explanation? Because Josh Allen, especially fantasy users, for all those out there that are in our audience, are used to Josh Allen consistently throwing for over 300 yards. So to go over a 6-game stretch and it only happens once and they lose in that game, it's a little bizarre.
You get the stretches of still significance and fantasy relevance in his rushing ability, whether it's a rushing touchdown, whether he's going for 60 to 100 yards rushing. So you kind of make up for some of that with that rushing ability. Now, to answer your question, since the Green Bay game, which was 1 week before the Jets, they kind of dominated the Green Bay pretty heavily in the first half and then just kind of kneeled on the ball literally.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers, they were running the ball down 17, down 21, and the Bills were just kind of like, well, we're going to be a nickel. We don't to the point where Von Miller said, why aren't you throwing? Like, we don't care that you run for 5 yards here. Like, that does not affect this specific game. And they continued to do it, brought it a little bit closer, but not really much. So he didn't really throw the ball in the second half that day. You saw the Jets game. So that game was, the Jets controlled the clock. They were running the ball fairly well themselves. He didn't really, then he got hurt. So, that game wasn't going to happen there for him. Then he was hurt in the Vikings game and did throw for 300 yards in a game that he needed to because the defense couldn't stop. And the one game this year, the defense was just wretched. They were just missing too many pieces, converted corners, Tremaine Edmonds out of the game, just too much to overcome in that game. And then they just couldn't guard Justin Jefferson, a problem that I think many defensive have had this season. So that game he did throw fairly well. And then Cleveland's game script was weird. They were up big early and then just kind of ran the ball and let Jacoby Brissett do what he wanted to do. They didn't, once again, similar to the Green Bay game, they didn't really care. Then you have Detroit, which was weird. That would have been a game I would have expected the yards, but another game that they kind of struggled in as a team. They hadn't practiced much. The injury showed up a little bit. Detroit was hot. They had won 3 straight and came back and actually took a lead. Obviously, then Josh exerts his will to end the game and was really strong to not only have a game-winning field goal to win that game, to go ahead in the game on a touchdown, the drive before. Then you started to see Josh kind of come into his own kind of in the fourth quarter of that Thanksgiving Day game. And then they were just running the ball all down New England's throat and just didn't need and I mean, you've seen it. The New England offense couldn't move the ball at all.
Unfortunately. Yes.
So there was no need for Josh in those, and similar here. I don't know what I expect from him this week in his passing prowess. I think that they're going to try to incorporate a similar game plan that we saw against New England.
Well, okay, let me go back to this because I find it interesting. And also, I want to give a shout out. So normally my prep, I don't know if every, whatever we are, fan, media, analyst, whatever our term is, part of my preparation is always analyzing the opponent. And what I mean by that is, so I do all our stuff for all the Jets YouTube interviews, shows, everything. I fully analyze the opponent. So the Buffalo Bills stuff. So I've consumed everything, the One Bills Live, the press conferences, the interviews to get up some nuggets. And one that stood out to me, and I tweeted it out earlier, was Steve Tasker on One Bills Live. He was doing an interview with Jim Nantz. I have a few other clips I'll be sharing from that interview on my Twitter account. But the one that stood out to me that I tweeted out earlier today was Steve Tasker said of the 3 losses the Bills have on the season, which are Dolphins, Jets, and Vikings, he said that and this is Steve Tasker talking about the Bills, that you can excuse away the Vikings one because it was just bonkers. And then the Dolphins one because of the weird heat statistical thing. How the hell did we lose that game? That's so weird. He said the Jets, this is Steve Tasker again, the Jets game is the only one where the Bills, and they're saying this inside the building, apparently, according to Steve, that the Jets beat us straight up. They outplayed us. They beat us. Do you and other Bills fans, media members, etc., everywhere in that vicinity agree with that take that the Jets are the only loss where it's just straight up, wow, there's no luck, there's no bullshit, there's no nothing we can point to is basically what Steve was saying out of all the losses that they've had this season. And that one kind of raises their eyebrows heading into this, that a team, quote unquote, was able to go one-on-one with the Buffalo Bills. And he kind of went through some of the key details there.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of Bills fans, and I mean every fan base does this, but the Bills in this specific season feel they should be 11-1. The one loss being to New York. He got hurt. There's no way for a comeback in that game. The way the game flow was going, that just wasn't there for them that week. Whether they were underprepared, whether they thought they'd roll the Jets, whatever the excuses may be inside the building, not sure. It's happened before. They've gone down to Jacksonville, lost 9-0, and the Jets are better than Jacksonville was.
Thank you, Kevin.
But they did go down and lose 9-6. What the mindset though was the same in terms of the Bills thought we're going to win on the final drive. Like, okay, this is one of those games where we're going to need to win on one of Josh's 15 come from behind victories. This is what we're going to see today. He's going to get it done with Diggs, with McKenzie, whatever the case may be. And like that why it's similar is like that Jacksonville game, it just didn't happen. There was circumstances to where the game plan, the flow, the way it went, they couldn't stop the run. And since then, they've been really good at stopping the run. It wasn't there for them. So yeah, I would think that most Bills fans wouldn't point to a specific, like if Diggs didn't drop this or this bad PI call, they would have won. Unfortunately, in the Vikings game, it took like 7 of those. It literally took a hand from behind him over a backup corner safety to win, as well as a fumbled snap, as well as a PI not called against Dawson Knox in the end zone. There's seriously like 7 plays in the Bills-Vikings game. And you guys played kind of a similar ish game with them in a way, not quite as crazy, but similar. These Vikings games, 9-0 in one. That doesn't even make sense.
That's ridiculous. That's a franchise record, by the way, for the Vikings. They're probably a franchise record for anyone, I would imagine, with that obscene statistical nugget. So yeah, it is the same. Again, I know all the Jet fans that are listening. The 1 for 6 in the red zone, the pinky toe out of bounds for Garrett Wilson. Mike White was 2 inches away from an 86-yard touchdown to Garrett Wilson to the house. So, yes, in the same light of boom, 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 boom. And then still, at the end of the day, considering all that crazy bonkers, and there's more, they lost by 5, and they were at the 1-inch line twice to win the game in 2 separate scenarios. And they dropped there's another one. They dropped the straight-up touchdown that would have won it as well. So, yes, it's bonkers. And, hey, I will give a tip of the cap. It just made me go, ooh. To the Vikings troll job, because they had a chance against the Jets to win the NFC North. They needed a win and a Vikings loss. Now they play them this week so they can handle their own business. But they said, we may not have won the NFC North, but at least we won the AFC East, and kind of flexed on both the Jets, Bills, Dolphins, Patriots for beating them all. And I was just like, you bastards. So that did get me to go, ooh, that good one, Vikings on the troll job there. So yeah, it is, but it is weird. Is that sustainable? Because the last year, I think there were 6-8 in the same sort of game. So again, I guess it's kind of the coin flip of the season. But again, you need a little bit of luck to make a run. So maybe it ends up winning and they're hoisting Lombardi. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I was wrong there on them. So who knows? I
want to put this out there too. I had a side of me that I know is uncommon, but I was actually like, I don't mind if the Jets pull this off. I know that doesn't help the Bills at all. It hurts the Bills. It hurts.
Sure, certainly. Yeah.
AFC East in general. And I was like, this Vikings team deserves to lose this, though. There's something about that matters to me.
Right.
Like, they're not going to do this again. They're not going to do this every single week. So part of me, like, they did go 4-0 against AFC East, but I do want to see them lose to Detroit, lose to somebody at some point, because I know they did some progression to the mean on their 1-score games, but I just need that team to lose. Like, it's not. They're getting really lucky.
I think it's this week, though. And it's weird because, like, we'll see how people react to it. I heard Vikings people are very upset that the Lions are a favorite over the Vikings. Again, another game they escaped that the Lions should have won. They found a lot of ways to blow that, including against your Bills. But more on that, perhaps a different interview on some of the time management at the end and some of the decision-making. But I digress. I will say I want to hear your guys' take on this because, Jet fans had this funny little dream last year. There was an injury to Zach Wilson, and some guy named Mike White had to step in. Who the hell is Mike White? And the Hall of Fame game, his jersey was down there in Canton. It was sexy, juicy, fun times. And then all of a sudden, the Bills came in. And by the way, I was at that game, unfortunately. But the Bills came in and booyah, here's a smack reality right to your face, Mike White. 4 picks. And then, of course, Zach Wilson gets healthy. Mike White disappears into the ethos. He's in the shadows. And we did not see him, obviously, up until this year in terms of a starting opportunity. How do you, and I keep saying you and kind of the collective you of Bills people, how do you evaluate Mike White? Is it he's full of crap and everything he's doing is cool, but it's not against us? We're the big bad boogeyman in the closet that quote unquote exposed him last year, and we're going to do that again in this national game opportunity. Tony Romo, Jim Nantz in the world, and we could show everybody again that Mike White's full of crap. Is it that? Or is there a greater level of respect? Like, whoa, the way Mike White's doing it this year is much different than he was doing it last year, and thus more respect it needs to be given here. Where do Bills stand? Honestly, just I don't need any fluff up the skirt. Yeah. Just honestly, what is the interpretation here? I'm curious.
What's funny is I think, and this probably goes against like what Jets fans think, but I think there was some form of like potential and respect for Zach Wilson in a way of like high quarterback draft. He has that untapped potential. He has shown to win at times. And I think that that's always in the cards of like, we haven't really had to play Zach Wilson much. He did then go and beat us, even whether he's 38th or 39th on PFF. I don't care. I think that there's that untapped, like Bills fans thinking like, we don't know what we have from him. So we're not as sure. We're a little bit more concerned that he could turn it on, that he could show something. He has top 5 pick ability. But when it comes, unfortunately, when it comes to Mike White, I don't believe Bills fans think it's very real. I think we saw
that was my inkling, by the way. That's my inkling of what you were going to. We don't pre-chat. I didn't tell you all the questions I was going to ask, but that was my inkling from Bills fans. But
I will say that they had some respect of Zach Wilson that I wasn't sure that they did. They do, because of the Josh Allen experiment, how he was able to develop, how he was able to turn it on, the high-end potential that you can see at times, and that we really haven't seen too much this season. And then beating the Bills, I think there was that. I'm going to be honest. I think there would be like that greater respect that he can run a better offense. He can run one that would beat the Bills. Not the Patrick Mahomes throw the ball for 400 yards. The Bills are positioned to play that style of football. Sometimes they get got against the Titans, against the Jaguars, against the Jets. Now in this control the clock, running the ball, limit Josh Allen's ability to get in a flow, that kind of game you can catch them in. But when it comes to a pure game where Mike White's going to come out throwing more, he's going to look for his weapons. Bill's defensive backfield is very friendly and healthy now. It's very friendly to be successful as a defense in that kind of environment. Sean McDermott's usually really good against not top flight quarterbacks. That's something he does as a scheme excel at, making Mike White make decisions against a confusing cover 2. Is he in man? Is he using a high shell? Is he dropping cover 3? What are they doing? Sean McDermott is, if he has a strength, it's that. So where he gets got is he'll stay in nickel when you're running the ball. And they believe Taron Johnson's are very good as a linebacker is at tackling and can cover really well from the slot. They don't come out of that. That's their base. They don't come out of that too much unless it's straight up. All you're doing is running. They might throw a third linebacker on the field, but you don't see it much. So Sean McDermott's going to say, Mike White, you're going to need to beat us. And they feel pretty comfortable with their recent scheme now that they have AJ Epinesa back. They have Greg Rousseau back. He played limited snaps against the Jets. Matt Milano didn't play against the Jets. Jordan Poyer. So you have some issues of like the defense feels like they're in a better spot than they were previously coming into this game. And they've stopped pretty much Ramondre Stevenson for the majority of the game. They stopped Nick Chubb. They stopped Dalvin Cook beside one run. They've stopped Nick Chubb and they stopped Derrick Henry. So the Bills feel pretty good about stopping the run in this one. Mike White's going to have to go out there and beat him, what he was unable to do last year. But we'll see if he's developed much. And this is going to be an opening to the Bills fan to either continue that tirade of like, this guy's not good, or be like, someone else got us. And, Sean McDermott probably feels pretty comfortable about it against a guy who, I watched that game. Like I said, I was rooting for the Jets to pull it out last week.
Yeah.
He did struggle though, previous to.
No doubt.
Yeah. He did struggle. So Sean's going to take some of that stuff Minnesota was doing previous to the breakout. And he's going to incorporate maybe some of that like they did against New England. Let's just not let Mac Jones touch the ball. And when he does, he's uncomfortable. So I wouldn't be shocked to see James Cook this week.
Yeah, interesting. And I will say that that list of running backs you mentioned that the Bills have been able to shut down, the Derrick Henrys, the Nick Chubbs, and all those cats. That's really interesting. No Zonovan Bam Knight on that list, baby. So we'll have to kind of see how the Bills, of course, respond to the UDFA star himself, which is funny. I'm going to be honest. First off, I am a draft geek, so I thought he was going to be drafted anyway. So when he wasn't, it raised my eyebrow. So Jets gave him as a priority free agent. He makes the initial 53, and then they cut him the next week, and I'm like, oh, man, someone's going to scoop him. No one touched him. Like, weird. He goes to the practice squad. There's no practice squad protections this year. I'm like, he's going to get scooped. No one scoops him basically all year long. I'm like, what is going on? And they finally bring him up because of the Breece Hall injury, unfortunately, week 7, who was a stud. And they bring him up, and then he finally gets a chance to get to Bears over 100 scrimmage yards. Like, ooh. And then Vikings, you saw the big burst run, which is like 48 yards or something. And again, so I'm just like, man, I thought Zonovan was good the entire time. Now he's getting his run. So we will see. He'll get his first whack, obviously, at the Pinata against Buffalo. I want to ask you about that secondary health you were just talking about, Tre'Davious White. I just mentioned Zonovan, the Bills didn't get a taste of. Well, vice versa, we didn't get a taste of Trey White because of the injury / the Bills' direct choice. I would venture to say with how they've chosen to bring him back. Let me ask you, what's the snap percentages? Is he back full bore? Is it situationally like third downs, fourth quarter, stuff like that? Like what is the Trey White experience at this current moment in time heading into week 14?
I would say full strength now. He played
full reps.
Full reps, limited reps against the Browns. Excuse me, against the Lions on Thanksgiving was his
right.
His
Correct. Yes,
played a couple series there. Then you saw 2/3 of the game against last week against New England. They've had 10 days now for him to feel good. I would anticipate almost close to full to play in most situations. They found a new guy they like you didn't see either in Xavier Rhodes. A guy that they've thought has been a veteran presence. He's a guy that came up through Leslie Frazier. So they to our shocking against New England, a team that doesn't really throw the ball. They rolled with their corner, obviously, in Trey White, that is coming off of injury. In a game, they knew they were going to run the ball. New England was going to run the ball a lot. And Xavier Rhodes, a guy they weren't sure how would react to run. And they went with coverage guy. They went with guys who were clearly better coverage corners. And I think they wanted to roll that out to test it for teams as they start to face Miami and even some threats in New York with the receiving core. They wanted to be ready for receivers that are going to be Mike White, maybe in a good rhythm, maybe as you see Tua next week. So that's their theory, is that they went with coverage corners who have been really good for the team. And obviously Trey White's great. And you didn't see Jordan Poyer either. The team's just different with Jordan Poyer. They haven't lost with him in the starting lineup this season. 8-0 when he plays, 1-3 when he doesn't. Only win against was a early season Steelers game with Kenny Pickett. So Jordan Poyer is a difference maker. He confuses he's got his hands on 4 interceptions, had a fifth that was egregiously overruled against New England last week. He's a difference maker. And DeMar Hamlin's a really good safety fill-in for Micah Hyde, who's also working out off that neck injury. We expect to see him in the playoffs now. With totally random kind of breaking news there for Bills fans that we did not expect to see him. But he is fully working out on the sidelines in Bills practice right now. So that's going to be an interesting nugget as we hit the next month. But the defensive backfield's in full health. They have Taron Johnson in the slot, and they're feeling really good about those 5 that they'll start and then have some good depth with the guy they really like in Kyer Elam as well there to kind of rotate in. But all full circle when most Bills fans were really interested in Breece Hall.
Yeah, I know they were.
On Kyer Elam. And I think the Bills knew that meant that they wouldn't be able to get Breece. Second year in a row, though, we were pretty sure they wanted Travis Etienne. We thought they loved Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. We have it on good authority. They were following them around throughout the entire offseason and pre-draft status. And then they went with a pressing need in corner, which they've never drafted underneath Bean to take a corner in day 1 or day 2. So we'll see where that all amounts to. But they thought they found James Cook. They ran him 14 times last week, just like you found with your undrafted free agent. The Bills feel like they found with their second round pick, who's mighty good against a team in New England that plays good defense. So just a funny note that the Bills are actually 3rd DVOA stopping the run. And they get all this heat about their run defense.
Often.
And
yeah,
and it's weird. They're one of the best run stopping teams in the league. The Jets got them a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
And a couple other instances here. Green Bay got him in a meaningless game.
Right, they did, yes.
But back to back there, they got him in that situation to where maybe those brothers were talking a little bit.
Yeah, perhaps. And let me ask you this, Kevin. Again, everyone, by the way, if you're watching the show, we'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes, but make sure you like the video, hit subscribe down below for more juicy New York Jets content, of course, and also hit up Kevin at that very handle. Hit him up on the Twitter sphere. Again, I love friendly trash talking on the weekend, and also, quite frankly, just straight up observing what the Bills side of things, what you guys are talking about over there at Cover One, and kind of sharing some of those tidbits. Kevin, I don't normally do this in an interview, but I'm just going to lay a take on the Bills, and I just want you to respond to it. You could call it malarkey, you could call it nonsense, you could call it whatever you want.
Okay.
First off, actually, before I say this, it kind of feeds into it. I want to say in general, I don't know if every fan base feels this way, but I don't want injuries to be the reason that things don't happen. So for you guys in particular, obviously, you went just through the laundry list, and obviously Von Miller, the most recent of which this week. That to me sucks, and I hate that. And I saw Nate, Nate Geary. He was doing the, the 13 seconds, which I know haunts you guys another crazy way that I guess you guys have found a way to lose. But like you had that, and that you have to take advantage of every opportunity because you never know when you're going to be back. Was basically the gist of what Nate was saying. So you gotta really appreciate and take advantage of these. And I say it sucks that the Bills are having these health issues because, again, the team that I saw week one destroying the LA Rams, I saw the game. I went to my bedside, did a quick prayer, and said, God bless whoever the hell is playing the Bills in the Super Bowl because that's going to be tough. So I hate the fact that injuries have, at the very least, warped that perception from that team to the team that we currently have, and we'll see. And they didn't even have Tre'Davious White back then, obviously, more of the injury conversation that we're just talking about. But with that being said, put it aside. Again, I hate injuries. I don't like those excuses. I want teams straight up to make their run. Bills Mafia, you bastards are crazy. And all the pain and suffering that I think at one point, we all used to collectively commiserate together when you guys had the 17-year playoff drought. New England was kicking all our ass. Like, I think we used to. Now the Bills fans are like, we're too good for you, Jet scumbags. We're on our own journey here, number one AFC and all this other stuff. So I feel like you've risen beyond that. So we're still the great unwashed down there. But my statement is this. Now that Von Miller is officially out for the season, I have to say, I can't see it for you guys anymore. Week one, I thought it kind of before the week one actually started. I said, the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. Now with Von Miller out and Josh Allen, this is just my take. So again, I want you to crush it or agree with it or whatever you're going to do. With Von Miller out for the year, Josh Allen compromised in some way with the UCL thing. Like, it's not the best version of Josh Allen that we've seen, in my opinion, now that's going to be a factor for God knows however long that is at whatever level. I don't feel like the Bills can win the Super Bowl without Von Miller. I thought he was going to take you over the top, and I thought more Josh Allen just getting better naturally as we were going through these years. Who the hell is going to stop them? But with the injuries, Von Miller in particular, what he can do himself and the ripple effect I saw in that week one Rams game, where all of a sudden all the other Bills pass rushers, just like Michael Jordan, all the other players, their levels raised because of Von Miller. It felt like to me watching, again, outside perspective, I'm a Jets guy. For all those reasons, I thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. And once I got the news this week, the first thing I said out loud to myself, not on the radio, although we did have a radio show that day, is just, the Bills cannot win the Super Bowl without Von Miller and with a compromised Von Miller. What say you, Kevin, to all those nasty words that just came out of my mouth?
I think what's interesting is Nate Geary would agree with you on that take. So there is a subset of Bills fans, media, that definitely they do agree. I think what's different is you just mentioned some of the ways the Bills have lost. 13 seconds was had without Von Miller. Now, Von Miller definitely would have brought them over the top in that game. I think that's fair to say. I don't believe that would have even been in that situation. Right. However, it didn't need to have Von. The roster was that solid to where that didn't have anything to do with Von Miller. That had everything to do with not scribbing the ball, not playing a sound defense, not being aggressive, and dropping off into a ridiculous prevent too high shell in a situation that didn't need it. With your bad corners in Levi Wallace, who is a downgrade to what the Bills have currently on their roster. So with that being said, there's definitely some credence to that fact of like Von Miller definitely could have been what was different about this Bills team. To me,
Mhm.
I think what might be different about this Bills team is the connection between Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, which is better this year than it was last year. And it's
Okay.
unstoppable at times. And especially with Josh Allen being right. This is why this week's important to Bills fans. Yes, they need to win, of course. But why it's important is this was the week Josh is supposed to be healthy or close to it. If we
Right.
see that healthy version of Josh, I think that alleviates one of the concerns you mentioned there. But like that was free football for the Bills to go 3-1 and almost 4-0 in a stretch where you can sit there and say, like, I've seen some people compare him to like his stat line was similar to Davis Mills, to like just
I saw those. Yeah.
yeah,
Someone tweeted that out. I saw that and laughed. Yeah.
to like he had 7 and 8 7 touchdowns, 8 interceptions with Mills or something,
Right.
something very
Yeah.
similar to
Whatever.
those.
Right.
And it was like, this is funny. This Josh Allen shouldn't be playing. The first time he had this injury as a rookie, sat out 4 weeks. He shouldn't
Correct.
really be
Right.
playing. But the Bills did not feel there was a big incident of further injuring, and they were right. That it has not really. That you've seen some duffs into the ground. You've seen some issues at times, but really hasn't been crazy. But it definitely has affected his high level of play.
Yes.
Now,
Mhm.
the Jets game this week is going to be like, and then Dolphins next week are 2 pivotal weeks to show us.
Yeah.
Like, is he going to
both at home, of course, for you guys? Yeah.
is he going to be ready? And these are the 2 games that tell us. Take a leap from the New England game to here. Take another leap to the Miami game. If we see that, I do believe you would see Bills fans say, we have the best player at this position. We also have a really dominant receiver. There's been lots of talks about Odell Beckham Jr. The team courted him on Friday. They think he could be a potential sign in Buffalo and be ready for the end of the season, postseason. So there's definitely some things to still be said on the Bills feeling like they have the ability, like they did last year, to win this thing. Someone like Micah Hyde comes back, and all of a sudden, Trey White's back that you didn't have last year in 13 seconds. Levi Wallace is a big downgrade. I cannot stress that enough for Jets fans or any fans. Levi Wallace stinks. He's a Steeler now. He was a big reason the Bills passed on Breece Hall. The Bills love Breece Hall because they needed to replace him with Kaiir Elam. The Bills are better across the field. Their linebacking core is improved with Milano and Edmonds is unreal. I'm serious. Like, as a non-Bills fan aside, their linebacking core is unreal. Matt Milano can cover anybody, and Tremaine Edmonds has covered receiver twos. So when they're both playing, and Milano's now apparently did not participate 2 days in a row again. We don't know what's going on with him. He didn't play in our first matchup. So we'll see how that turns out. But the 2 of them together change the game. And now you have DeMar Hamlin, who's developed at safety. You have Jordan Poyer back. You have Trey White, who you didn't have last year. You have Xavier Rose and Kaiir Elam on the other side. It's all right. And then the defensive line is better, believe it or not. Even without Von Miller, the defensive tackle plays better. Jordan Phillips has been good for this team. Daquan Jones has been really good for this team, especially stopping the run. They didn't have either of those last year, and the defensive tackle presence was bad. Ed Oliver has been a revelation since Von gotten hurt. He's been dominant. He won defensive player of the week. He absolutely beat the Lions on his own. So the Bills are feeling pretty good, and then they like what they have from Gregory Rousseau. They love what they have from Boogie Basham and AJ Epinesa, definitely as run stoppers. They're feeling pretty good that they didn't have last year defensively. The Bills defense was ranked pretty high. It was awful in against the Chiefs. It will not be worse than that this year, regardless of what happens. And I think that they still feel like their offensive lines is still a step up from those games as well. So yeah, adding James Cook, who they didn't have, over Zach Moss.
True.
And they're getting James Cook going for a reason right now for the playoffs. There's enough upgrades to be had that Von Miller was a pure reason to set them over the top. But they were 13 seconds away from maybe winning the Super Bowl, maybe. And Bills fans think, Von Miller aside, that shouldn't have mattered in terms of just a coaching decision that didn't get into the kicker and some really bad defense that they will never play again in that situation. So I think they're feeling pretty good, man, to kind of counter that argument. But there is definitely a growing sentiment. And this week is huge. The Dolphins week is huge. If Josh takes back to that leap you saw against the Titans, even more impressively than the Rams, absolutely blew out, just absolutely buried a full strength Titans team. And did what they needed. They've beaten all the division leaders. So they do have tiebreakers galore. They do have everything galore going in on some of these teams. They have played one of the hardest strengths of schedules in the league. They're going in battle tested, and some of the players will start to trickle back. And come the postseason, you might only have Von Miller on that list if they can start to trickle in some of these names back. If Micah Hyde shows back up at some point, if that's realistic, all their fringe guys will show back up, are supposed to be active at some point. Really, you might be going into the playoffs with just Von Miller. The Bills feel like that is not a feat that they can't overcome, especially with his presence helping still to coach on the sideline.
Well, Kevin, I just got to say, again, I've never done that before on one of these shows, but touche, my man. Didn't realize you were president of the debate club. Must be one of your trophies on your back shelf there, but I love it. That's exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for a bull to get in the ring and another bull we start smashing horns, and I love everything that you said. You have beautiful counterpoints for a lot of the beliefs, but also to see the sense and some of the things that I've heard and read, but also a balance to it on the other side. So, Kevin, I have nothing but virtual handshake for you, my man. Very touche on that.
Boy Green, nice. And you're not wrong by saying there is a growing sentiment that people who could follow suit in that. That's why this game specifically, and the Dolphins, and further the Bengals, a couple of games here, the Bills still continue to play a hard schedule, especially with the Jets being good and the Dolphins being good and the Patriots being serviceable. It's a really hard schedule for Buffalo. They don't just get to cakewalk like they did last year at 11-6, and get to just cakewalk around. They're better this year, actually 9-3 without Vaughn. But you got a big contingent of growing Bills fans that kind of feel like that could be true. But here at Cover One, we kind of break down like their DVOA is better, their yards per play is better, their points per play is better. They're actually playing really good football. They won 3 out of 4 games with a hurt quarterback. They're feeling pretty good about that game. With some of those games you just told me, they were not won by Josh Allen.
Right. Obviously. Yeah.
So they're feeling pretty good that when he's healthy, they're winning games with Ed Oliver, like I just mentioned, and others, James Cook last week, that they're feeling pretty good and this Jets game is going to be a culmination of Josh's health, other factors. You got Trey White back fully. It's going to be interesting to see, is it put together this week? And if it's not, then you'll start to see a sense of like, when is this going to come together? And it needs to happen as soon as next week against the Dolphins, if for some reason they're unable at home with bad weather. So we'll see what Mike White can do with that potentially.
Yes.
So if they can't get it together, then it better happen next week, or then you're right. That rhetoric will really start to show itself in mid to late December.
All right, so let's put a bow on this all the way around. Again, this is so pivotal in every way. It's almost like the Captain Obvious. Thank you for your sponsorship of this show. But it is like if Buffalo wins, they create this separation with the Jets, and then they obviously, as you said, lining up these tiebreakers. They have the Dolphins, who, if they're on this revenge tour, then they'll have the next opportunity next week. However, if the Bills lose, all of a sudden the AFC East that seemed like this automatic given, I'm sure a lot of people had that before the year. All of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute. They just lost that to the Jets who would sweep them in that magical scenario. And then they play Miami, who would have the same opportunity. And all of a sudden things start getting real murky. So with that being said, Kevin, I make every guest do this at the end of the show. And we can talk for another few hours. I love talking to you, Kevin. But let's round it out with this. Your prediction for this game. Straight up, how do you think this one's playing out? Your score prediction and any nugget you wish to predict or share on this rematch between the Buffalo Bills and the Jets.
Some final nuggets for me that I'll leave just in general. These aren't my opinion. These are actual statistical facts. The Bills are number 1 overall in DVOA. They're number 1 against strength of schedule of all playoff teams, 4th in the NFL. Number 2 in strength of victory, 3 in the NFL. They're number 1 in point differential in the AFC, number 2 in the NFL. Number 1 in WAR loss to injury. To your point earlier, which is a fact. And they're doing all this with the number 1 in WAR loss to injury and number 3 in points per play. In the league. So the Bills are feeling pretty good, and some of those metrics are better than last year. So they're feeling pretty good against a division that's better straight up than they had last year.
For
AFC East DVOA wise is the best division in football. Second, if you're just looking at record. So there's a lot to compete for. And I think this will help the Bills playing Jets team that's good, a Dolphins team that's now good, a Patriots team that still can get you. If you're sleeping.
They can. I can attest. Yes, they can.
Two against you, 1 against us last year. They can get you when you're sleeping. And unfortunately, the Bills aren't sleeping anymore in terms of New England game. So I think the Bills are going to become prepared. And Josh said it. Like, this is a game. And Josh, this is a stat I don't want to throw. 25 touchdowns and 3 interceptions coming off of a team he's lost to.
Interesting. Wow, what a weird stat. That's okay.
So
very specific.
He does take this personal. Why it matters is it's he takes these personally. He does, to where he's like, I lost to this team earlier. He said it himself, leading to Zach Wilson's ramble of not thinking he played. He said, I played like shit.
Yeah, right. Straight up. Which again, the accountability, which a lot of Bills fans loved. And again, it only, he said that and all his player teammates immediately come to his back. Like, that's nice of him to say, but it wasn't. But like, it's cool that he said that. But of course, I heard from a lot of Bills fans, like, it only means something if you then turn it around. You can't just keep coming up to the podium after losses. Cause again, you had the Vikings one after the Jets, right? So there's another loss. So the only, woe is me, that sucks. Like, it only works until it works of you actually putting it out. But 100% in that moment in time, of course, right?
Yeah.
He took full accountability, and I think that revved a lot of engines.
So I think that matters into this week. The Bills are at home. The weather's going to be there. They play specifically well against Mike White. They have in the past. I'm leaning toward a Bills victory, but one that is not a given. It's certainly not. They've already lost to this team already. The Bills really have visions of making sure that that rhetoric doesn't come true. And they play really well at home, especially late in the year. They don't lose much. You can get them on the road. Jets did earlier. Jacksonville did last year.
Jaguars last year. Right. So what's your score prediction?
I got 27-21 Buffalo. And I think it's tight. I think it's tight in this game. They don't cover the spread. And I think that that Josh Allen does get it done in a situation to where he might be down late in the game 20-21, and they go and score a touchdown to make it 27-21. Which we've seen. And that's my prediction. And I think that the Jets are able to put pressure. We'll see a new Knight that we didn't see already. You guys will see Cook, who you really didn't overly see, and Trey White. So it'll be a different matchup. And I think Sean McDermott come in. That game is that's thrown away. It is a second version, especially with Mike White, version 2.0, almost like these teams haven't played with all the changes on both rosters a little bit. I don't know. Corey Davis. I don't know that this is relevant at all, other than Josh Allen being like, one of my worst games in the last 2 years. We're going to come make good on it. So I appreciate being on the show, Boy Green. And I hope some of those statistics help. And at the same time, I have nothing but respect for my Jets fans. Once again, diehard Yankees fan, and love bantering with you guys about the Jets.
Yeah, I'm sure after this occasion, at least from this side, this won't be the last time we have you on for sure. That was super interesting, super informational, and I think we could take a lot from it. But Kevin, before we get you out of here, of course, feel free to plug anything you'd have. Now, you may ask yourself, why the hell would any Jet fans want to hear my blabbering mouth? But I'll tell you, it's something I do every week in terms of absorbing as much content from the opponent as possible. That, for me, is very cathartic in a lot of ways, and also just super helpful for me to just kind of get a full grasp of everything they're going against. So I think it could also be valuable for our listeners and viewers to have that same sense. So let us know some of the things you kind of got going on this week in your Jets Bills prep.
Yeah, so you can catch our live on-demand show on the Going Deep podcast Tuesday. We previewed the Jets game and previewed the season to date, talked a little bit about the Odell Beckham Jr. situation. We talked about the Dolphins game, which could be relevant to as the Jets are fighting for a playoff spot as well. So there's a lot of crossover right now, especially within division opponents as compared to, let's say, you were the Cowboys, like you mentioned earlier. Not a ton to really take away. But check us out Tuesdays live at 7 o'clock. We do have Jets fans in there. I have a pretty good Jets following with my Yankees stuff. And then as well as, I'm on Let's Talk Jets all the time. So you can catch me at Kevin Masseri, as my handle says, live shows Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And my Twitter feed is really where I drop a plethora of statistics and advanced statistics. And I have a whole game day thread, which will kind of break down my perspective of how this game's looking. And I'm not just positive Bills. I'm not just like Bills are dominating. They're dominating the best team in the league. You'll see me rail like I did earlier on Levi Wallace. You'll see me rail on situations where, and you guys targeted Jaquan Johnson in the first matchup pretty extensively. He's not touching the field. The Bills.
That's too bad.
The Bills went as far as not putting him on the field ever again. So that's the kind of stuff you'll see from me, some of those trends. And the Jets actually did lead to some personnel changes from the Bills defense going forward. So really excited to be on the show Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. Check us out on YouTube at the Going Deep Podcast Buffalo. You can find that on all your major platforms, and find my Twitter pretty easily at Kevin Masseri. And we'll break down pretty much everything you can. And it's like I said, it's not just all rose-colored glasses, especially Team 9-3. We expect to be 11-1 right now.
Absolutely, and I love that. So, Kevin, a phenomenal debut. And like I said, it won't be the first time. We got plenty of future matchups, I'm sure. between these two Titans, and hopefully that's exactly what they are, competing in this way. That this AFC East was a surprise this year, but hopefully it just sets up for some great divisional play for the foreseeable future. Kevin, thanks again for joining us, man.
Thank you for having me, and maybe we have a time to chat because of a third matchup. I don't know that that's outlandish. Will the Jets come to the Buffalo in the 2-7, 3-6 game?
Yeah,
it's
or maybe we host you when we win the AFC East. Maybe you guys can come swinging by, huh?
In the 4-5 game, sure.
So we'll see what happens. Great stuff there again. Kevin Masseri joining us on the show. You can follow him at that handle. Thanks everybody for tuning in for this Jets Bills preview.